Welcome to part 2 of card reveals on Ready Set Live. This is Tyler, and today we'll be tackling the mountain of new reveals that we got as a community in the last 24 hours. As of this recording, all of the first chapter has been revealed for Disney Lorcana. In order to make this information easier to take in, this analysis will be a 2-part episode, with each part covering 3 ink categories of new reveals. On this episode, we will be covering Ruby, Sapphire, and Steel. Before we get into it, please remember to like and share the content, as well as subscribe to the channel. Every bit of support helps grow the channel and bring new content to listeners like you. This episode is also sponsored by Texarkana Podcast Studio. Wanting to start your very own podcast or voice web series? Well, Texarkana Podcast Studio is the place for you. Whether it's true crime, sports, murder mystery, or a fun card game you want to talk about with your friends, Texarkana Podcast Studio is here for all of your recording needs. Check out the link in the description below to schedule your first session today. Texarkana Podcast Studio, where your voice is heard.
Ready, set, draw!
Well, welcome back. If you're here, it more than likely means you listened to part 1 of the ink breakdown of the newest and last reveals of the first chapter. And we are really excited, and by we, I mean still Alex and Jacob here. We are really excited to get into the last 3 inks. I know I have my favorite ink in this bunch. You may not. But Ruby, Sapphire, and Steel have some absolute bangers to discuss.
I have a lot of my things that are fighting for second favorite. So
Yeah.
Steel and Sapphire I like a lot, and Ruby's coming on up with all these reveals.
Yeah. I have my favorite ink we're going to discuss first in Ruby. I'm going to be completely honest with you, though. I'm not I'm not going to treat this like some diehard fan that can never trash their team. I'm a little disappointed with some of these last reveals with Ruby. Like, it was hitting so hard early on. I was like, dang, so many good cards early. And I was kind of expecting that heat to keep up. They're still my favorite. It's still my favorite ink to play into. But I would hamper expectations on what you think of hey, Jacob, I heard you love Ruby. What do you think of these Ruby cards? Probably not as hot as you'd think. But we're going to get into it. We're going to break it down, give you some analysis of these cards. So let's start off with one of the best villains of Disney of all time. It is Scar, Shameless Firebrand, an 8-cost uninkable 6/6 Floodborn Villain King. As a Floodborn, you know he can shift, and he can shift for 6. He has 1 lore, though, and he has an ability called Rousing Speech. When you play this character, ready your characters with cost 3 or less. They can't quest for the rest of the turn. I don't know about you. When I saw that ability, we had not seen all the rest of the cards at that point. And I was fully expecting to see some lower cost hyena synergy. I was expecting to see Bonsai or Shinzi or Ed, somebody show up as a low cost that made Scar cheaper or something, gave him more lore. I don't know. But this card, I don't think I have to spend a lot of time. He needs new cards to be playable to me. He needs cards that cost 3 or less with exert abilities that are good and you definitely want to be doing for him to see play. I'm not touching Scar.
Scar, to me, he's in the niche strategy. The problem is he's in Ruby.
Yeah.
Amber would love something like this, so he would pair well with the Amber decks, but 8 cost uninkable's already hard. Shift 6, so that means you need another Scar. Well, you have the red one in here, but you also have the blue one's decent, but
he costs 6 too.
Yeah. So
the red one, the thing is with Ruby, the Fiery Usurper Scar is a 5/3. You're usually saving Fiery Usurper as a 4 cost. You're usually saving him to banish something that's 5 willpower. So you've never really expected him to stick around, and you're needing him to stick around if you're going to shift into something in 2 turns later. So, yeah, I don't really think we need to waste much time on Scar. The art's awesome. But
one last thing before we move on to the next one. I will say I think he's understated with his lore, and because of that, they must assume this is a very strong ability, and in the future, they had to bounce it for that. So I think in the future, we can expect good things because, let's be real. Think about Lady Tremaine. We talk about it all the time. Every time we get an action, she becomes better. It doesn't matter how much better, she becomes better because there's more options. Every time we get a 3-cost character, I don't care what it does, it's better.
Make sure it can exert if you want to play it. It helps Scar a lot.
Exactly. So, they can challenge. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
even a vanilla card
Get a
can,
quest, then get a challenge.
so every single 3-drop will push this card a little bit better. So we do have high hopes for that.
Yeah.
But the
right.
next card we have, for me, is something I'm actually a little down on as well. Shockingly, you might not be, but it is the Poisoned Apple item. It's a 3-cost uninkable, and it's the ability of the item is take a bite, pay 1, banish this item, exert chosen character. If a princess is chosen, banish her instead.
Okay, so get out every reason you don't like this card, so I can go ahead and debate.
Okay, so my first thing is we're just going to take it at cost. It's 4-cost, exert chosen character.
Okay.
So
Fair.
that we have freeze, which we spoke out about in part 1. If you haven't watched it, you can finish this first and go back. It doesn't matter. So uninkable, and we hated that card. If it's a princess, is conditional removal. That's only going to be good against princesses. So I think if it was inkable, I would be talking a different tone. But uninkable, it's like, why not just play, more of something else? I mean, Dragonfire hits everything, and it's a little bit more. It's still uninkable. Like, I can't find a home in this for Ruby with this is 4-cost uninkable, technically, and Dragonfire is, 5-cost uninkable, but it's non-conditional. It just hits anything.
Yeah. So here's the deal. I fully agree that worst case scenario, you look at the floor of the card, investing 4 ink to exert something doesn't feel good. It especially doesn't feel good when you play the first 3 because you technically get nothing out of it. If you don't have a target you want to exert right then and there and pay the extra ink, like if you play this on turn 3 because it's your only turn 3 play, you're like, all right, I'm investing in the future, but that's not why you play this. I think that it's kind of unfair to analyze a card based on a meta that you don't know, but it is at least fair to, I think if I phrase it like this, in a princess meta where any single princess is like a key card that pushes a deck forward or is the synergy piece to a deck that has like onboard lasting abilities like an aerial who's a collector, something like that. If you can threaten its removal just sitting on board, I know I've played Commander against you enough. I know that this enchantment I'm about to bring up from Magic is cheap. But enchantments like Seal of Removal and Seal of Doom, in Magic, they are enchantments which are like items that you just play down and then you wait. You wait for someone to put something down, and then depending on which of those seals it is, you can either bounce or you could destroy something. I know on the other side of the table, when you've played those cards against us, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't play what I want to play. That's setting me back. It's just going to die. Like, I got to find a way to bait that out. And a poison apple in a world where princesses matter, it's a really like a big pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah, my problem is it's where princesses matter. You're not always going to play against princesses.
There are 16 different princesses in the game across 3 different inks. So it's not like you're never going to see a princess. I would be shocked, honestly, if any decks existed. Excuse me. If any decks existed that contained Ruby, Sapphire, or Amber, like those involved decks that didn't involve a princess of some kind somewhere. But
Sapphire more than most. Amber, from what I'm thinking of, there might be a couple small princesses like you're talking about, like the Rapunzel we spoke about and stuff like that.
yeah, Ariel might be a thing that can get seen.
Sapphire for sure.
Yeah.
Sapphire decks will have princess because like Aurora, Dreaming Guardian, stuff like that. But to me,
Yeah.
this card could have literally said 3-cost uninkable, pay 1, banish this item, banish any character. I mean,
Yeah.
in my head, my thing about Seal of Doom, it's the same thing. I think it's 3
it is.
mana, but it hits every single card. It's only 3 mana though. It's not 4. It's
I think
3.
it's non-black, to be fair. Right?
Okay,
Yeah.
it might be. It might be non-black.
Yeah, but
so,
it's 4 different colors in Magic. So
that I see your point. In a world where princesses is meta, of course this is a counter card, but I don't see this card getting played at all.
I do think though it still has some value. Uninkable is the only drawback to me. It still has some value of just sitting on the board because we know like whenever your opponent has Elsa, the one that exerts opposing characters, like whenever she exerts, having that sitting on board waiting is something that makes you say like, okay, well,
Elsa's not a princess.
no, I'm saying her ability
Oh,
sitting on the
yeah.
board at least makes your opponent think,
Yeah.
like, am I okay with this getting exerted?
Yeah,
and
if
then
you're
attacked?
having to use it for that, it definitely feels bad.
It
But
feels bad, but
yeah, I get what you're saying.
it could be a big swing.
I
so
think it should be inkable, but that's really my big complaint with it.
yeah, I think it has room to grow, much like your argument for Scar.
For sure, for sure.
So the next card we're going to discuss is one of my favorites.
Neither of us were let down by this card.
No, this card is gas, straight gas. And what do you love to use gas for? Lighting fires. Because Lefou is an instigator.
I love it.
He is 2 cost, inkable, 2 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore, and he has his action as an ability. Fan the flames. When you play this character, ready chosen character. They can't quest for the rest of the turn.
8 copies of that ability in a deck, which
yes!
I don't see you playing one and not playing the other unless you just have to make cuts.
I think if you have to make cuts, like you reach a critical mass of things that you want to ready, where you just can't fit all this stuff in, but like it doesn't matter. Like,
or if you're character based, you play this one. If you're item based or action based, you play the other one. Like that's it. But I'm playing 8 copies of the Fan Flames in my head.
Dude, the times that I've lined up in my testing a Mulan or an Aladdin with a Fan the Flames, both of those times I've been like, what a payoff, dude. It is worth the card. But the only drawback is sometimes I draw the Fan the Flames early and I'm like, I got to ink it. And then you reduce the chance of finding Fan the Flames later because you only have 3 left. I got 7 left, man. So it's not even, if this cost 3, I would still consider playing 4 of it for the effect. It costs 2, it has decent stats. Even for its body that's left behind, you're getting good use out of it. Like as a 2/2, we've seen the 1 cost 2/2s be just fine in the curve. So this guy does every single thing I would want. If you gave me a 1 ink 2/2 for 1 lore with no ability, it's still playable.
Yes, he's so good.
If you gave me a 1 ink Fan the Flames, as we've said, it's still playable. You staple them together, the 2 parts are greater than their whole, or the sum is greater than the 2 parts that combine. It is a chef's kiss of an ability to have in Ruby. I welcome it. Like I said, probably my favorite of all the Ruby reveals they've done in the Blitz. So what's our next card?
The next card is Captain Hook, Ruthless Pirate. He is a 7-cost uninkable 5/5. He quests for 2 lore, and he has Rush, and also his ability is You Coward. While this character is exerted, opposing characters with evasive gain Reckless. How thematic.
It's so messed up, dude. It's so messed up.
Oh my gosh. Everybody's affected in the evasive player.
I don't like it.
And giving them Reckless. I love it.
It's uninkable at least. It makes people think twice about it.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I got to say.
I definitely, and what I like about it is you can play like 2 of them. You don't need, do not need 4 copies of this card in your deck. In an evasive heavy meta. Okay, but just to take care of a few evasives?
He's evasive hate, which I also think means that like you're probably going to see a little bit less of him being played ubiquitously in decks like Mother Gothel would be, because Mother Gothel is just like all characters can't quest on your opponent's side if she's exerted. He is specific to evasive. However, like we said before, evasives are probably beyond like your super fast lore rush deck. Evasives is the other strategy that wants to play more solitaire and like just quest away and let you deal with the problem. And if you're going to give Reckless to any keyword, you probably do it to evasive.
Exactly.
And it's going to hurt him. So he has Rush. He can take out something on the ground. The thing is, though,
and then it leaves him open to be attacked, which is nice.
Yeah, but it also, if Mother Gothel had Rush, that would be insane.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is only specific to the cards he hates means that Rush is probably necessary. It makes him like very good. The other thing is, though, Mother Gothel is inkable. He's not. So you gotta wait to get usefulness out of Captain Hook. And now my mental strategy when I'm playing evasive decks is get to the win and get to a situation where they are like out of it by turn 7. Like I need my evasive deck to be humming before Captain Hook comes down and ruins my day.
For sure.
But at 5 willpower, I will say if he does clear something with his Rush, I'm gonna get him with 1.
Yeah, that's what makes it nice though. He has Rush. He comes in, he takes something out, gives something else, evasive, Reckless, or all of them. So you're at least getting a 2 for 1.
2 for 1.
You know?
Yeah,
2 for
it's
1.
good stuff.
But We'll go ahead and move to our next card.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to take this one because I actually am really high on this card. It is a 1-cost item for Ruby. Love that. It's inkable. Love that. It has an ability that I think is, just
One of your favorite abilities?
one of
we
my
could
favorite
say?
abilities, I think. It's called Fireproof. It says you can exert this item and pay 3. Ready chosen character they can't quest for the rest of the turn. We got Fan the Flames repeatedly for 3 ink on an item, and it's a low upfront cost.
That's the important part.
Yes.
You could play this on turn 1, like have no other turn 1 play. You play this, and you go, I'm not mad about
I'm
it.
not mad.
And then
makes
it just sits there for late game value.
Yeah.
I mean, Fan the Flames is a 1-cost card.
Yep.
We know that. But to repeat it over and over and over for 3, it's worth.
Yeah, the thing is, like, the Poison Apple situation, it banishes itself, so it really doesn't matter if you got to pay 1 ink. Like,
exactly.
it's
yeah.
done.
Yeah.
This, I am willing to pay 3 ink for a Fan the Flames effect in a pinch. Like, if I can weave the 3 ink in, I'm going to do it. So where I think this card shines are the heavy hitter decks that really have, like, massive characters, like especially like Steel Ruby decks, because in those decks, when you get to that critical mass of ink, you end up having too much ink to spend sometimes, where like you maybe played out your 6, your 7, your 8 cost character. And now every top deck is like, please let me draw something of value. Please let me draw something of value. This gives you an ink sink to pour your ink into to like actually get mega value out of your big characters. Yes, they can't quest, but that doesn't matter. Not every single big cost character wants to quest. Sometimes you want to use them for their meaty bodies. You just want to slam them in. With Maui, you get a 3 ink or a 3 lore quest, and then you take that 8/8 body to something.
Exactly.
You with Maleficent, you already got the value by banishing something when you played her. So how about now you use that 7 strength that she has, take out 2 things. Quest once, take out something that has 7 willpower. You can start to use all your high lore stuff a little more aggressively if you want to. And we always say it, but like Mulan loves this in the late game. She only costs 5. You can weave in multiple cards and play this. It's even with a deck that has Mulan as the top end. I love this card because it lets Mulan get multiple triggers.
Exactly.
Because you don't have much ink to spend, or you don't have to spend your ink on a lot of stuff anyways. You play a bunch of low cost stuff, ready Mulan, burst your lore. Like, oh boy, Shield of Virtue is the truth.
That ability is a we're a fan of it here on the channel for sure.
Yes.
We'll move on to our next card. We're going to talk about Moana, Chosen by the Ocean. She is a 5-cost inkable 2/6, so 2 strength, 6 willpower. She quests for 2 lore, and her ability is, this is not who you are. When you play this character, you may banish chosen character named Taka. So, with speaking of that, we're going to go ahead and talk about Taka at the same time. So
One of them.
Yes, one of them. If you want to see, there are 2. There's another one still. Stick around. You'll hear about it.
Yeah.
So this Taka is the burning one. It is a 6-cost uninkable, 8 strength, 6 willpower with Reckless. So, what do you think about this pair, Jacob?
So I'll start with Taka.
Okay.
Uninkable 6, Reckless with 8 strength is scary, but much like in the movie Moana, spoiler alert, what's hiding behind this is a thing of peace, because I shouldn't actually be scared of this. As long as you play the right way, like Moana did, then this should not scare you. It cannot quest. It cannot do anything but be a beater that just takes things out. But with 6 willpower, this thing wants to be chumping into like small bodies repeatedly, I think, in order to get maximum value. But even when it's doing that, like you're not feeling too bad about your smaller bodies getting eaten up. And even if it does swing in, you have a whole turn to think about it.
Yeah.
You have a whole turn to sit there and think like, okay, Taka's going to quest next turn.
I think
or a
just
reckless attack.
like Gaston and another card we're going to talk about here in just a second, they could have gave this rush.
Yeah.
They totally could have gave this rush. 6
Yeah,
cost
it would have
removal.
been a big removal.
Yeah,
it would have been worth the freaking super rare.
Yeah,
that it is,
exactly.
so.
And it being uninkable is why I said that they
Yeah.
could definitely have given it rush. I mean, this being very mediocre makes Moana very mediocre to me.
The other Taka is better, for those of you wondering
yes,
our
the other
analysis.
Taka
It is
is
better, but it's actually really good. But it being really good and this one being not good means I don't really care about Moana's ability to get rid of this Taka.
Exactly.
It's if this Taka was really good too, Moana would be really good. I would expect her to be like to see play and expect her to be weaved into decks, but with only one Taka being, in my opinion, relevant to like a game, not seeing it for this. So with her effect, you said you didn't like Poison Apple because it was niche into princesses only.
Yeah.
Can you get more niche than naming a specific character?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. I guess the more Takas we get, the better.
Yeah, it
Moana
scales with
gets.
Taka.
But
Oh,
yeah, I'm with
man.
you. I this pair is not super strong to me,
And the thing is too, like, I get that she can banish a character. So if they have Taka, you have like the biggest tempo swing in history for 5 mana.
oh, for sure.
It's like better than like a grab your sword. Essentially, if you get to knock out a Taka with this character, it's great. But she only has a 2/6 body. Like I feel like you could have been a little more aggressive if you're going to make her ability so specific. That's such a payoff. It's like the stars aligned, and what'd you get? A mediocre wish.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan. But speaking of cards that are, finding the most ideal form of their card design, Maui Hero to All, a 5-cost inkable Ruby card with 6 strength and 5 willpower. He has 0 lore, which is a trait on cards we see in Ruby that have the Reckless keyword, because he has Reckless, but much like we wish Taka would have had, Maui has Rush. This is the best form of this 0 lore design that we have. I don't think hitting for 8 with your Reckless is that much more relevant than hitting for 6 with your Reckless.
Not much more.
And I would beg that any difference you have is completely mitigated by the fact that I can do it immediately.
Exactly.
Because if Taka can clean something in one hit for 8 with its 8 strength at like next turn, I would rather hit something for 6 and have it have to hit me back. And like I still got it, Or I did 6 to something and then smaller things got eaten up by Maui instead. Like I got to do damage and it ate other things. So
where I like this card is the first card slot that I think this looks at is Dragonfire. Yes, Dragonfire is removal. They don't have to be, exerted or anything. But this being inkable, where Dragonfire is not, and then anything that's exerted, this can take out almost anything that's exerted.
Yeah.
So, especially when you hit that 5 willpower, that 5 seems like a huge one. 6 is another very big one. Then after that, it's like, okay, they're just crazy high willpower. So
yeah,
I do like that. It's going to help fight for, like, if you're in that deck where you're running out of uninkable slots and you got to cut a couple Dragonfires, this might be a good slot for you. I mean, you can be like,
yeah.
Especially when you got Be Prepared and stuff like that. So it could be like, oh, well, I don't need Dragonfire. I can play this card because I need more inkable.
Yeah, and I do love that it does have a niche upgrade over Dragonfire in certain matchups. The matchup I'm thinking of is Princesses.
Yeah.
Because the most annoying thing is when Princesses get 2 Auroras out and they feel like they are just free against your Ruby deck. Because typically the answer in Ruby deck has been the spot removal of Dragonfire. And once they have 2 Auroras, Ward protects both Auroras from each other or with each other. You have nothing to do.
Yeah, Ward in general, this is good against.
Yeah, he gets through and hits things that are seemingly protected with Ward, which it's fantastic skill. So the thing is with the rest of the Ruby reveals, guys, Alex and I both agree. Maybe Tyler, if he were here, would have some other opinions. We don't feel like the rest of the Ruby reveals that we're going to show on the screen right now are too impactful, but we are going to highlight a few that we think are like maybe relevant in a very like specific situation. Like in this situation, they are definitely playable or relevant. So I'll start with Sword of Truth. Sword of Truth kind of has the same poisoned apple effect. Alex mentioned he wasn't sure if he would even pay for a poisoned apple if it was just, pay 4 and banish something. Well, Sword of Truth doesn't even banish anything like outright for 4 ink. It still is conditional in that it has to be a villain character that it banishes. It is a 4-cost uninkable item. Banish this item. Banish chosen villain character. I like using the word the truth to describe cards that are really, really good. Like this card is the truth. And I don't think the Sword of Truth is the truth because it doesn't have the application of generic usage.
Yeah.
But in a King of Olympus, Hades run world, Sword of Truth is a great answer.
Yeah, it's great. I just for this I think both of these cards, this and the apple, could have been inkable and not been busted at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's situational removal. Just make it inkable. If you
Yeah.
want to ink it, like it's 4 cost, you know? So, I mean, it's only for one character type. I'm glad that they did give princesses and villains probably the 2 most supported archetypes, I would say. Musketeers being the 3rd. Also, those I feel like I'm glad that there is a counter card to them, but I really don't think either is very playable myself.
Yeah. So one of the other cards in this last little bit of Ruby reveals that I do feel like is worth a little attention is Ruby got its own Rafiki in a 3-cost uninkable Peter Pan fearless fighter. He is 3 strength, 2 willpower, and 1 lore, and he has rush. I know from both of our testing, we found that Rafiki was more useful than initially expected, but with these later reveals, his uninkable status puts him in question of being like a must play. Because initially he was pretty much like an amethyst smash. But I don't think that at this stage of the game, with how many uninkables we're seeing, that is the trait that really turns me away from Peter Pan. So he would have to be in like a dedicated control Ruby deck. So I'm just thinking that Rush inherently makes him useful, but I think that Ruby decks are going to want to like escalate up to their top end and use ramp to get there. Maybe a Steel Ruby deck would like this, but Steel already plays so many uninkable cards that you want either way. Like, I'm not fitting Peter Pan in, but there's still the Rafiki value to Peter Pan that he clears a 3-cost. Even if you're on turn 3 and they already had their turn 3, he usually clears something they have. So that's pretty nice. But what's a card that you like from this list that still seems like you still see some niche playability in?
So I'm going to give an honorable mention just to the Elsa Ice Surfer being in these colors. Mean you can play the Amethyst Elsas with this in conjunction. It's not the best. It's 4-cost inkable, 3/4, quest for 1 lore, and it works with the Anna as well. So it's kind of just synergy, you know? So whenever you play a character named Anna, ready this character, and it can't quest the rest of the turn. So it has the Fan of Flames built in if you play an Anna, which we like Fan of Flames. So I just feel like it deserved a little honorable mention.
Mm-hmm. Is there one more that you think that's like
I have 2.
2?
So I have two very fast ones. The first one is Tangle.
Hate this card.
Each opponent loses 1 lore. I don't think it's that good. I'm glad it's 2-cost inkable and it's an action. Yada yada. I just love this ability in the game. I like
I appreciate
the issue of math changing, and I see Ruby loving multiplayer with all these abilities. So that was my honorable mention for that. And the last one is Cut to the Chase, and I've been a big fan. It's 2-cost inkable. Sorry, action, Cut to the Chase. I've been a big fan of things that give other things keywords. So I like that this one gives the rush. So just like some other things we talk about, giving evasive and other.
Even Pocket Watch gives rush, but it's repeatable.
Pocket Watch gives rush and it's repeatable. But I'm glad that there's a way in Ruby to give something rush if you need it. You know, just depending on colors. Cards like this, they're not super impactful, but they're necessary for those situations, you know. So if you need it in Ruby because of certain things, you add it. Ruby has a lot of rush naturally, but some other colors don't. So it's just nice to have both of those in the game, not necessarily anything super big.
Yeah. The thing is with Tangle, your point, like I get that it's like a ability you want in the game, and it's like it's something that can mess with math, and I respect that. It's just Street Rat is so much better
For
than
sure.
that. that it like there's a reason we're bringing it up in like the secondary plus
Yeah.
discussion, but like it to me that could have been a 1-cost card to do that. It could have been
It
1
could
cost,
have.
but
It's
hey,
inkable. That's why
it
I'm
is what
like,
it is.
whatever.
I don't think they want to push the effect. That's what it
Exactly.
is. It's stapled onto a mediocrely statted Rapunzel that's uninkable. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so they really don't like this. Aladdin
Yeah.
Heroic Outlaw is just pushed.
Yeah,
That's what we can see. So.
They like Aladdin.
Yeah.
So the other 4 cards, we're just going to name them, but they'll be on the screen. We're not going to talk about them.
Mhm.
Is Abu. Then we have
He's got a sword, which Abu is holding the sword, which is
Exactly.
pretty cool.
we have Captain. He's
Colonel's lieutenant.
Colonel's lieutenant, and then the Ruby Stitch Abomination.
I will shout out to Stitch real quick. Much like Maleficent Uninvited, that's 3 lore for 5 cost. The Stitch here, a 6 cost inkable 4/6 vanilla with 3 lore.
It's not bad at all.
It's not bad at all.
We like the 3 lore. It pushes
It's
cards
just
to the
a
next
vanilla,
level.
and rubies already have targets that they can play. I will say that the ruby 6 cost slot is not like super populated. It's just typically I'm spending turn 6 playing like maybe multiple cards, maybe spending some more ramp to get up to 8 and 9. 6 cost is not something I'm really actively looking for, and other inks have other good cards in the 6 slot, like for instance Genie on the Job. Stuff like that is in the 6 slot so frequently that I don't know if turn 6 is where I'm wanting to spend my ink on a vanilla that's not ready to do anything. Turn 5 with Maleficent's great, but this not so much. I'm not sold on that. All right, that wraps up our Ruby discussion. While it is sad to move on from Ruby as my favorite ink, I think we have probably, if there are like risers and fallers on the stocks of my opinion, Sapphire, I believe, was the weakest ink by far for the longest time. It just didn't have the punching power. It was a supporting role, but what I love to see, Sapphire, our next topic, has gotten not just punching power, it's got punching power where you could play a mono Sapphire deck and have completely viable options to just play for days in the late game. You have such synergies. You have enough items really to like be a mono Sapphire item slinger deck and be fine. It's, oh my gosh, I cannot like.
So we'll start off with the first card,
Oh, God.
and we're going to start off with a banger.
Yeah.
We have the Belle, strange but special. She's a 4-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 4 willpower, storyborn hero princess, of course. She quests for 1 lore. She's got 2 abilities, everybody. Hold on to your freaking seat because the first one is read a book. During your turn, you may put an additional card from your hand into your inkwell face down. That's ramp.
It has to be inkable.
It has to
Let's
be
be
inkable.
clear about that, but still.
And the second part, my favorite part, while you have 10 or more cards in your inkwell, this character gets 4 lore.
Extra.
Plus
Oh my
4
gosh.
lore. This card
Oh.
is top end without being top end. It is
Yeah.
4 cost, ramps, and then if it sticks around, it's going to quest for 5.
As a 4 cost.
25% of your win con.
Yeah.
Boom.
And what's beautiful is she only costs 4. So if you get to that point and you're drawing extra copies of her, you can probably put 2 out at the same time.
This
I'm
card
coughing because I'm in disbelief.
This card is legendary. It deserves to be legendary in all aspects. And
yeah.
this card might be the best Sapphire
Yeah.
card, period. You could play it in any deck.
And I do want to give a little shout out to the Lorcana HQ Discord. When this card was spoiled, Rochelle, the community manager, was in there and she previewed the spoil of Belle by saying, this next card, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, this next card is how I feel about y'all and the experience here. And it was that we are strange but special. So it's like a dig, but you get away with it because the card is gas. So this is one of those cards like in Magic, for anyone who plays Magic, when you have the exploration effect of getting to play an extra land, it means that you run out of cards quicker than you think you would because you're using more resources out of your hand, but you are getting payoff for that. And because in Lorcana, most cards in your deck are a land, it's not like you're rarely going to get to use this. Like in Magic, you play exploration and then you run out of lands in your hand, and then you're top decking spells, you're not even getting lands. So even if you wanted to play an extra land that turn, you don't have it. But in Lorcana, because a lot of cards are inkable, they're all lands if you want them to be. They're all inkable. So you can reliably use this effect pretty often. And I think if you play 2 per turn, I'm doing the math quickly in my head. While I'm doing the math in my head, why don't you give thoughts on like how much this matters in like the deck building landscape for like any Sapphire
deck
deck?
building wise, if you have Sapphire period, this card's an option. It doesn't have to be a princess deck. It's inkable. Like every bit of ramp we normally get is uninkable. Like we don't have much inkable ramp. Well, there's a couple more that we're going to talk about later, but that being inkable is huge because yeah, you might desperately need to ink this if you have to, but you're never going to really want to. So if you don't have to, definitely play it. But it's pushed, it's strong, and I love that it puts a clock on the game because when you get to 10 or more cards in your inkwell, like that's pretty far in the game, even when you are ramping. And a lot of times people would stop at 9 because normally it was Ruby ramp and you were just doing the Maleficent.
Yep.
Well, 10's going to be the number now.
Yeah, and I did the math, and you probably at home were wondering, what are you doing math for, Jacob? Well, the thing I'm doing math for is I'm thinking like, okay, on the turn you play this, if you did 2 ink every single turn after you play this, what turn do you reach 10? And it's turn 7. That requires a lot of cards.
Yeah.
I get that.
But that's before one jump ahead, before other stuff.
Yeah, that's just manually inking with Belle. So even in that scenario where like you whole new world on turn 5 and refresh your hand so you actually have that ability to do it and double ink every turn, if you can quest for 5 with Belle on turn 7, I think you're really happy about that.
Yeah.
Even if you wait until turn 10. Turn 10, with the way the game has slowed down, it's not like it's not likely. Yeah. Turn 10 can very well happen.
She could win the game on turn 10. Like at turn 10, you could easily be at 15.
Yeah, you have enough say-so in your Illumineer capabilities to control the game enough to make sure that you get to 10 ink. You can find a way. And so I feel like sometimes when cards seem pushed and aren't, a lot of like effects seem like win Mori, and it's like, well, that effect is pointless. Like it doesn't matter if your 15 cost card says you win the game. It's 15 cost. You're never going to have that ink, so it doesn't matter what the card says. In this, that my favorite part, her ability is my favorite part. Like it, not often do you get a ramp card with payoff stapled to it.
Exactly.
It's so good. So we're going to move on to another wonderful princess, especially in princess packages, but it's pretty useful across the board. It's a 5-cost inkable Jasmine, Queen of Agrabah, a Floodborn hero, princess and queen somehow. I'm not sure how that works, but she's a 2/5, 2 strength, 5 willpower, with 2 lore, and she has shift 3. So you can put her onto the disguised Jasmine. When you play this character as the ability caretaker, when you play this character and whenever she quests, you may remove up to 2 damage from each of your characters. This is just like the recurring healing of Cinderella, where I'm like, this just turns off challenges.
Princess decks and all this just random healing that they're getting, and we spoke about it. We spoke about the other one. They're gonna be so good in that mid range. It's gonna be so hard to take care of them without the actual be prepared card.
You have to have banishing blows to make it matter, and it's even more so with this because you get, like we said, on play and quest like John Silver. You get immediate value. It's so useful, and I think especially too on turn 5, you've seen grab your sword. 2 damage is a relevant number to heal. If grab your sword did not kill something, they likely have 2 damage still left on them. Jasmine clears it up.
Exactly.
And it makes it where any grab your sword they do later, if it's not a banishing blow, heal it up when she quests. You want to quest anyways. She can shift for 3, healing for 2, even on turn 3 isn't that bad. I think you could safely challenge into something with a princess, shift her onto a 3-cost thing, and actually heal up meaningful damage. So
exactly. I mean, worst case scenario, you have the other Jasmine. You hit something that it takes 2 damage because it's a 3/3. Then you play this and it heals herself because each of your characters is not each of your other characters. So that is really, really good.
Yeah. So I want to say this next card because with Gramma Tala, it's one of the sleeper cards, in my opinion, of the reveals. She is an under the radar card because you look at her, she's a 2-cost inkable, 1 strength, 1 willpower, 1 lore. But it's her ability, so thematic to the movie. I will be with you. When this character is banished, you may put this card into your inkwell face down and exerted. Oh my gosh.
You may feel like people think this card's underrated, and everyone I've seen loves this card.
Okay, maybe I'm just.
It's not super powerful, but 2-cost inkable, huge.
Yeah.
Because, another thing that ramps you, the 1 jump ahead, 2-cost uninkable.
Yeah. She
This
can
ramps
sing
you-
1 jump ahead.
She can sing 1 jump ahead. She's not going to trade anything and probably beat anything, but who cares if she's banished, no matter how she's banished.
Yeah.
She gets killed in a board wipe, ink.
Yep.
She gets killed by an action that banishes, ink. She gets just taken out because someone's tired of you getting 1 lore.
Yeah.
Oh, ink. I mean,
Yep.
this being a 2-cost and being played on turn 2 is so much value.
Yeah.
And just like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing my
And
thing.
typically the answer to things that get value when banished has been letting them go.
Yeah.
And if they're using Let It Go on Gramma Tala, like what are you doing? But it's funny to me that like if you use Let It Go on her and you use that only like niche removal that gets around banishing, you got what you wanted anyway. She's face down and exerted in your inkwell. So Gramma Tala being able to sing 1 jump ahead, I also think is really, really relevant because she wants to go in the inkwell anyways, which means you probably want her exerted so she can be challenged. On turn 3, I cannot think of a better turn for ramping than singing 1 jump ahead, getting the extra ink, and then spending your 3 ink for the turn to play Detective Mickey.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I know it's a Christmas situation of like having all the perfect cards, but you have 1 Gramma Tala, 1 jump ahead, and 1 Detective Mickey. That's all I ask you to have. Just 1 of each of the 9 cards you'll see by that point in the game.
And on turn 3, that takes you to what? So she gets you
You
one
have
from
your one. Okay, so you have your 1 ink from turn 1.
Yep.
You have
Two
turn
ink.
2. You inked something,
And you played her.
And you played her.
So you have 2.
So you have 2.
Sing
Then
1 jump ahead.
You sing 1 jump ahead.
That's
You got
3.
yourself 3.
Play Mickey, 4.
You play Mickey. You're at 4.
and then
whenever
you can ink another card from your hand on turn 3.
yes, so you'll have
5.
5 ink, and that's before she gets banished.
Exactly.
If she gets banished on their next turn, you're at 6 before your turn 4. So
Yeah.
that's
I just like that she's kind of
So
board
good.
wipe protected too, because for the most part, if she gets dealt damage and gets banished, she's gone. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
That's
it's just.
oh my god.
I mean, a Tinkerbell happens. She just, she's good.
She's good. Yeah, you got what you wanted out of her.
You're like,
I think-
okay.
I think the only thing is she is technically a dead draw late in the game, but typically if you're a ramp deck, I know you don't want to top deck her, but she's still inkable if you
Yeah.
really want it, and she's still a body that can still quest for 1. She's still something that can be flexed to use, and
I'd rather top deck this than 1 jump ahead.
yes,
So,
I agree.
Detective Mickey's kind of on the same line, but it's not inkable. So I'd rather probably top deck this than Detective Mickey.
Yeah,
Because Detective Mickey's putting something else in the inkwell. But
yeah. I am just a huge fan.
all right, so the next card we have is Hades, Infernal Schemer. He's a 7-cost, uninkable, 3 strength, 6 willpower, quest for 2 lore. And his ability is there a downside to this? When you play this character, you may put chosen opposing character into their inkwell face down. It is
Woo!
Let It Go on a stick, dude.
Yes. At 7 cost uninkable, it's definitely making you have to really pay for it. But
The ramp strategies are okay with it.
I'm so okay with it. This is what I was talking about, by the way. This was the card I was talking about when I said that Sapphire is getting tools enough to be like a mono Sapphire is okay because they have top end that can do stuff. If you get removal like this at the top end in a Sapphire deck that isn't playing Ruby, I feel like you have your, okay, I just got to get to 7 and everything will be okay because I'll be able to get rid of that thing like that genie or whatever that's been bugging me. This is something that like kind of like you can telegraph whenever an opponent has let it go because they won't exert their 5 cost character.
Yeah.
You know, like they won't exert something that costs 5 when they very well should because they don't want to lose it. They definitely want to save a let it go and get rid of something in surprise for a free song. This is just something that from now on, whenever Sapphire has 7 ink,
It
the
could
threat's
happen.
alive.
Exactly.
So I love that it gets around banish effects like let it go. Oh my goodness. Like I love Sapphire now, dude. It's just,
It's gotten some heat, and it
Yes.
needed it, like we talked about.
it's a
And
legendary. I mean,
I'm glad that afterwards it's still a 3/6 that quests for 2, so it's not just unusable. I mean, you're still a body with some decent stats.
yeah. Yeah. To me, the uninkable counts in Sapphire, it is something that I think has to be an asterisk point. If you are playing a ramp strategy in Sapphire, you are going to be in a position where you find yourself counting your uninkables and you say, oof, this is like kind of scary because I already have 8 with Detective Mickey and 1 jump ahead. And now I don't really feel like I have a bunch of room for a bunch of other uninkables. But you have to keep in mind that when you are ramping with the uninkable cards, you are getting the ink that you skipped essentially. Like you're getting an ink out of Mickey Detective. He just happens to be the ink and he ends up being a body.
Exactly.
1 jump ahead gave you the ink. What it really cost you was the weird random card that got put down that you'll never see again. That's the cost of the card, essentially. But the other beautiful thing about the uninkable counts in Sapphire is we got a card reveal that is going to make running more uninkables a lot less risky. I'm not saying go crazy with it, but we got an item that is, to me, it's my favorite card among the part 1 episode we discussed and the part 2 episode we discussed. Of all the cards reveal, Lefou Instigator included, this card is Jacob's favorite card revealed. It is Fishbone Quill, a 3-cost inkable item. It has the ability, go ahead and sign. You can exert it, put any card from your hand into your inkwell face down. So you have a Hades and you're on turn 4 and your opponent just played stuff that you're like, I don't really care about that. That's not a pressing threat. You know you're not going to get to turn 7 anytime soon, but you really, really need 4 ink and you don't want to ink the card that's in your hand that's inkable. Put the Hades face down. Send it face down. You don't even have to reveal it. They don't have to know what you just put away. Because how many times have you looked at a Mickey BLT being inked because I have to reveal it to you? And you're like, ooh, good to see that going into the inkwell.
Yeah.
Good to see Aladdin Heroic Outlaw going into the inkwell. You have to reveal it. With Fishbone Quill, all you have to do is just put it face down. You don't have to show it because it doesn't matter if it's inkable or not. So I'm going to give my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. I think this puts your uninkable count in Sapphire decks that are ramp up to like 25. I think you can put up to like 25 cards, 35 inkables, 25 uninkables, and really push your ramp card, like ramp effects highly.
I'll start off with first by saying I'm very shocked that this is inkable
Yeah.
because of what it does.
Yeah.
So I would say I would probably still, before more testing, I'd probably hang around the 20 mark and play 4 of these because if you could do 25, but if you do 25, and probably 20 as well. Let's be real. You're going to be hard mulliganing for this card. If you don't have this card, you could be in big trouble, So
Yeah.
and when you start top decking all these uninkables, I remember playing 16. Oh, was it 16 or 14? I think 14 uninkables, and in a Sapphire deck that did it, and then just top decking uninkables was horrible.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because you're top decking ramp cards, like we talked about with the 1 jump ahead and the Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
Top decking those cards never feels good, but uninkable cards like the Hades, top
That's good
decking that
stuff.
late game feels great. Top decking it early game and being able to put it into your inkwell feels great.
Yeah.
So if you play those, you're definitely going to be on that hard mulligan for Fishbone Quill. So you just got to keep in mind you only have 4 of these.
Yeah. And there is one little caveat here. I do recognize, before y'all think I'm getting too gung-ho and I got like rose-colored goggles over this thing, I recognize that later in the game, this card's useless. Like when you hit your critical mass of ink, when you hit 10 ink, this does nothing.
Yeah, top decking this is not good
But here's the deal.
in that case.
What other strategy does Sapphire heavily lean into?
This is what saves it. It's an item.
Items.
Yep.
It is items. So it can give you triggers on item effects that you really want, like Maurice, and like this next card that I would love to have Alex give us.
So the next card is what I would say one of the payoffs for items, and it is what the item deck needed, which is a finisher. That card is it Tamatoa?
Yeah.
And he is so shiny. So he is an 8-cost inkable, 5 strength, 8 willpower. He only has 1 lore though. Interesting, huh? What we have here is his first ability. When you play this character and whenever he quests, we're getting that everywhere now, you may return an item from your discard to your hand. Whoa. He is inkable and he returns something?
Oh my goodness.
I'm shocked. But the next part is the best part again, and that is Glam. This character gets +1 lore for each item you have in play. That is insane.
That is insane. And I think this, we're always waiting for cards to make other cards better. There's one card that I absolutely love with this guy. Can you guess what it is?
Like, is it?
It's an item.
But is it underrated item or a highly rated item?
It's an underrated item.
Ooh.
That I think this guy in this specific ink combination I'm thinking of, go ahead and take your guesses at home. Make your guesses in the comment section because I'm going to say the name of the item in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Frying pan.
Really?
Steel.
Okay. He gets it back.
Steel is one of those colors that does have top-end threats that you want to ramp into. And steel also has a wonderful item now in Frying Pan because the one thing we've been missing is a way to recur items. We've recurred actions, we've recurred characters, but we haven't recurred items. The thing is, Tamatoa gets you back that Frying Pan after you banish it. And what does Frying Pan do? It stops your opponents from challenging. What is he more vulnerable to? He's vulnerable to some challenges. I know there's like other strict removal, but a lot of your item synergy cards like Maurice and Belle, they want a quest, which leaves them vulnerable. But Frying Pan is only a 2-cost inkable item. It's cheap. It usually is going to be cheaper to play because you're going to have your Belles and Maurices, and you're going to get it back even after its one-off effect with Tamatoa for doing exactly what you want to do, and it's questing. So I think the awkwardness is you want to quest whenever Frying Pan's on the board, but if you do that, you technically don't get to get it back because you can't do both. But it's still payoff. Like you want just sit a bunch of Frying Pans on the board, and then quest with Tamatoa, and then if they play something next turn that ends up being a little scary, grab them back when you quest with Tamatoa, banish it, stop them from challenging, move on with your life.
Yeah, this is what the item deck needed because the item deck was Maurice and Belle, and you're like, what are you doing? I'm just drawing more cards and playing more items. And I'm playing them cheaper. It's like, okay, well, how do you win? I play more items. And I'm like, well, how do you win? Tamatoa is how you win the game.
Yeah.
It gets you that lore. It gets the items back if they get dealt with or if they're repeatable banished items. And
Dude,
it needed it. It needed it. This was the perfect card. He's 8-cost. He's inkable. So if you draw him early, just put him in the inkwell.
And in decks too, the thing is, unless you get something, the other thing I'm thinking of is like with Ariel, who's a collector.
Oh yeah,
there is no.
I guess
item.
That's the other win con.
Well, there's no. But I'm saying the problem with Ariel is people are like, well, we don't have an item that returns items to your hand to replay them, but we do now have an item that can get rid of itself, be recurred, and then played again.
Yeah.
So that is something you have to consider, and that whenever you get to that high ramp target range, I think item decks want to play a high velocity of ramp now because you get to that high velocity of range of ink where you can start like just banishing Frying Pans for the heck of it, and then recurring them with multiple Tamatoas, and then playing them all back, and then doing ready shenanigans with Ariel. Like there's a deck here, and I'm gonna build. Let me be straight. I'm gonna build Ruby Sapphire ramp first, but Steel Sapphire is probably my next deck. A Steel Sapphire items. So I'm very excited about that. Now, there's one other card that I was gonna mention, Scepter of Arendelle, but I think it's more appropriate to bring up Chief Tui instead. A 7-cost inkable, 3 strength, 6 willpower, 3 lore, and baked in support. Chief Tui, respected leader, is basically if Maleficent Uninvited was perpetually given support through Scepter of Arendelle,
Exactly.
but it's baked in so you don't have to use the scepter every single turn. It's not vulnerable to that. I just think like when you're using this stat line, I know you're paying 2 more ink for it, but I mean technically you're paying 1 ink and an extra card for scepter combo with Maleficent. So this is another viable top end thing to ramp into for a Sapphire deck, regardless of what your other ink pair is. I love this card.
Yeah,
It's
I agree.
solid.
It's super solid, and it's got that 3
It's an
lore.
uncommon.
Yeah, I like some of the big statted uncommons that we're getting. Like they're not super special, but like they're accessible. They're going to
Yeah.
be accessible, and that's the nice thing about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let you take the next one because I know you really like it as well.
Yeah. So the thing is, this item may not be as cheap as a Fishbone Quill, but it is also inkable. It's a 4-cost inkable item called Eye of the Fates, and it has an ability, Exert. Chosen character gets +1 lore this turn. It's called See the Future. And I do see the future. I see this item getting played. I see this item sticking around because it doesn't necessarily warrant like hard removal all the time, but it essentially, as long as you have characters on board, it's a character that you can't challenge that quests for 1. So what I think about Eye of the Fates is like, you got to think about it in terms of you don't just play 1. It's like Ariel. You don't just have to play 1. You can populate your board with 2, 3, 4 of these. And you can turn in that late game scenario where like maybe your board just got wiped. Be prepared to banish all items. So if you had Eye of the Fates on the board and you got Be Prepareded, whatever the plural or past tense of that would be, you can get a situation where like I can just play a 1 lore, 1 cost character. I can play a Gramma Tala. And if I have 2 or 3 Eye of the Fates, she's questing for 4 next turn. So you better be ready.
And on the bonkers
you
end,
better be prepared.
On the bonkers end, this with Ariel is absolutely insane.
Yes.
Untapping and retapping and then
getting more lore
getting
out
more
of it.
lore is absolutely insane. That card is a combo card, and this card goes with that card.
Here's the thing, guys. We're not talking what we know the meta will be, but we can definitely speculate on like if the meta is this, we think this is strong, right? So if the meta contains Sapphire, I think your counter pick is Steel without a shadow of a doubt because of the only item removal we know thus far is either returning only certain items to your hand with Befuddle or Beast, Hard-Headed, and Break.
Yep.
It's kind of weird to me that Steel's the only color that got item removal because it kind of means like if Sapphire is really strong, you have to have those cards.
Yes.
Because all the strength is in their items. It's so good. So good. But not every card can be good. Okay, not every card can be that great. So what's one of the cards that might have underwhelmed you in Sapphire, Alex?
Okay, one of my first underwhelming, even though I like this, and I've said it before, we have worked together, which I'm glad it's 1 cost and inkable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just underwhelming. It gives support, so it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just the colors have Scepter of Arendelle,
Which is just
better because it's repeatable. So I think work together. Like I said, I love cards that give the keywords because it's nice that they're just there and they're available if needed.
Mm-hmm.
But why did they? I mean, I guess they had to put it in blue because it's the support color. But I'm like, man, you have the scepter.
This feels like an amber card to me.
Yeah, it
That's
easily
what
could
it really
be.
does.
Like, it easily could be. And the scepter just outshines this tenfold.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your card you got?
I'm thinking that one of the more just like whatever. I don't love Mufasa. It's so sad to me. I know he has 3 lore and he's a 6 cost. He's literally identical to Stitch Abomination in the Ruby reveals that we were talking about. Mufasa, King of the Pride Lands, is a 6 cost, inkable, 4 strength, 6 willpower, 3 lore, vanilla. Like I said, he's a vanilla, so he's going to fill the curve and he's going to like set the baseline of what the stats should be able to do. It's nice to me that in a mono Sapphire deck, maybe you do have that 6 cost that has the high lore and can like be a little bit of a threat to ramp into. But when you have stuff like Chief Tui sitting at the 7 spot, that's just way better. I will take 1 less strength and pay 1 more to get support thrown
Yeah,
on.
for sure.
It's just so much better. So, what about you?
Next we'll have is the Magic Golden Flower. It's a 1-cost inkable, and it's an item, which is nice because it's an item. It has Healing Pollen, and it can banish itself, so it is nice.
That is nice, yes.
So you can get it back. We should have talked about that with him.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
But we are talking about now. So remove up to 3 damage counters from chosen characters. So I will say, I guess the one redeeming factor of this is it can be banished and recurred over and over. So that is a big plus, but removing 3 damage from chosen characters is not that big a deal.
Yeah. I think with that effect, you have to have a beefy body, which Tamatoa does. Like you can like negate some challenges or a smash or something. But like I said, with Tamatoa, usually what they're doing is they're just going to take them all out in one swing. That's typically what's going to happen.
They're going to Dragon Fire,
or they're going to like attack with something big
or something big,
yeah. So the
Not
healing is a little bit more
around.
niche. You're using this as a combo piece, in my
Yes.
opinion. You don't even care if it heals anything.
No.
So I feel like a lot of the times you're going to hear the words I remove 0
Yep.
and I play the card again. So the last card that we're going to just briefly mention is tell me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. I think it's Philoctetes.
I want to say it's Philoctetes, but it doesn't look like that.
Phonetically, I'm going to guess the C is silent, and I'm going to say Philoctetes.
But it's Phil.
It's Phil. The Hercules fan in me is really sad. I forgot how to pronounce that, but I know it's Danny DeVito, and I know he calls himself Phil. So he is a 2-cost inkable, 3/1 with 1 lore, and he has support. I do think it's cool. He has mentor. That's flavorful. But support, it's relevant that he has support because he has 3 strength to give for a 2. It is also like game relevant to me that he is the only 2-cost that can quest with 3 or higher strength.
Yeah.
So he is a 2-cost that can trade into your Simba protective cub. He's a 2-cost that can actually like banish a lot of those 2/3s that we previously considered to be like completely safe from challenges. So that's relevant. He has support though, so you kind of want to quest with him. But yeah, that wraps up Sapphire, which I believe was just like high riser. Like you should have bought Sapphire stock last week. You know, if you're really looking to get major pluses on your dividends. But you know, there is one other ink that we're going to discuss today. It is Steel.
Yes.
And I think Steel got a card that everybody's been waiting for. What is it, Alex?
All right. So both Tyler and I were very excited to see this card because we both really enjoy the Musketeer deck. And we finally got Donald Duck. He's a 4-cost inkable, 2 strength, 5 willpower, quest for 1 lore. He has the bodyguard mechanic just like all the other Musketeers do. But his ability is Stay Alert, which is so important. During your turn, your Musketeer characters gain evasive. Now they can deal with the evasive
What is
threats.
the deal? I was literally on a Emerald Ink episode with Tyler. Like, what was that? Last night, 2 nights ago? I can't remember at this point. We built a Musketeer deck or a bodyguard deck together on that episode with them. And one of the things that came up after we were building Tyler's deck was an Amber Steel bodyguard deck. I was like, okay, your biggest problem here, you really need your grab your sword because evasives are going to be a real big issue for you, Tyler. And then we got Donald.
We got Donald.
It's one of the hardest counters to this tribe that I never expected them to get this.
I didn't either, but I'm very happy to see Donald, if I'm being honest myself.
I bet you are because now you have a
Now they
direct
have just
answer.
a built-in threat to evasive, which is like one of the biggest issues, like you said.
And it's one of those things too. That's just thinking about it defensively or reactively. You now have evasive on your actual Musketeer's character for their own benefit of just being evasive. It is a little
But it's
tricky.
only on your turn.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's only on
during
your turn.
Oh, okay. That is purely offensive. then.
Purely offensive.
Well, that's still nuts.
Yeah.
But in my head for a second there, I was thinking, oh, no.
No, if
That's a
it
big
was
problem.
period, it was like, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, because I was thinking too, I was like, that doesn't interact with bodyguard very
Yeah,
easily.
bodyguard and no. It's
Yeah.
only offensively for sure.
I will say this. 1 lore means that
It's 4, 5, 6, 2.
Yeah. It's 4, 5, 6 right on the curve. That's pretty great. And at least it means too that like you know that he has evasive, right? Your Musketeer characters gain evasive.
Yeah.
So he has evasive even though he doesn't say it.
He doesn't say other, correct?
He doesn't say other.
Yeah.
So he's a bodyguard. On his turn, on your turn 5, you can reliably hit something for 2 if you really want to.
And then Goofy can heal you.
You can kill a Peter Pan with this.
Yep.
That's pretty relevant. This is and then Goofy heals you. Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Then you drop Goofy heals you, and you're good.
That's relevant.
Yeah.
Donald Duck is
he was kind of the final piece that made the puzzle perfect.
Yeah, I'm not like, here's the deal. I love the synergy of the cards. I think it's a very fun deck.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think it's going to be like a top contender. I think it's going to be like a tier 2
I can see that.
meta relevant deck. But the fact that it exists is going to make people respect, like, it has card draw.
The Musketeer Tabard is what makes it
Yeah.
so good.
It has card draw. It has healing. It has strength increasing. So, like, Mickey's going to make this a 3/5, like, for instance. It has evasive answer. It has the things that you're really looking for. What you really want is just stuff to put behind these bodyguards. So you can do bodyguard tribal, but that makes bodyguard less useful of a mechanic. It's pretty much like you might as well not
just
have
need
it.
a couple big
just think-
things that aren't.
I think in this deck, you put Lilo making a wish. Cards
Yeah.
like that, sneak those in, let them sit behind multiple bodyguards where you're just never gonna get the challenge.
Yeah, there's no chance.
So that would be solid. Are there any other decks that you think can capitalize on like the Musketeer package?
I guess package wise, like if you don't play Amber, you play the Steel, just the 2.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like Amethyst would be pretty good with it because you have the challengers in Amethyst as well as you have in Steel.
Yeah, I could see
you don't
colors that don't
necessarily
have
need
evasive.
the healing.
Yeah.
So Amethyst has a little bit of evasive, not a ton,
Mm-hmm.
and that would help a lot. That's kind of the main one I think of because Emerald has a good chunk of evasive. Amethyst has a little bit too, but that's a big one I can think of. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just think of like take out Amber basically. And you could probably
Yeah.
pair it with a good chunk of things, but what wants to sit behind the bodyguard? You know?
Yeah,
That's what you're really thinking about.
And you really want that Musketeer Tabard to utilize to get the card draw. So it
For
really
sure.
pushes you into those 2 colors. So I was just kind of having a little thought experiment there. The next card that we have that feels like it just deserves a lot of attention is one we mentioned earlier when we were talking about Ruby. It is the other legendary. The legendary that made up for Gone 2. Moana referenced this. It is the Steel Taka. It is Taka Heartless. 6 cost. Inkable. 5/5. 2 lore. And it has the ability Seek the Heart. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore. So it's not stealing lore like Aladdin, but it is gaining you lore for doing something that you want to do. At a 5/5 for 6, it has very respectable stats. And even if there's nothing for you to banish, it still has 2 lore, which is respectable for 6. So I'm not thinking this is like a game ender or anything, but I do think this makes the Ruby Moana at least have something to look at and say, thank you.
yeah,
I can get rid of something.
this is a fun one at the low part of top end. 6
Yeah.
being kind of like that first threshold of top end. This is one that I just like seeing an ability like that. So it's really cool that we got this card, and we have another card right after this one as well that has that kind of ability. But it's cool that we got that they get to banish a character and then you gain the lore. So you're getting kind of 2 for 1 in that same sense. You don't really have to quest with this unless you just want to.
Yeah.
And of course, like if the trades work out worse and you don't need to make the trade, then yes, of course, quest away. Make them attack you. But the ability itself, that banishing and then gaining lore ability is really nice, which probably leads us into our next one.
Yes.
The next one we have is our newest Simba, Rightful Heir. It's a 5 cost uninkable. It's 3 strength, 5 willpower. It has 2 for its lore as well. And it has that same kind of ability like we talked about, a little bit different, but during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you gain 1 lore. So I feel like we can kind of talk about this ability at the same time.
Yeah. Coming a turn earlier, I can totally see why this is like, a little less impactful. I think they were a little harsh to Simba here. I think the reason you see them being a little harsh with like cutting off 2 strength, making it uninkable, only gaining 1 lore, is because he's an uncommon.
Yeah.
That's your uncommon to legendary gap right there. Is you get that kind of power creep.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
So
Exactly. Everyone will have this one. How many Takazos you actually have?
in a future where you're like, let's say there's like a popper format, like in Magic, you know, you can use uncommons and commons. This is a card that I'm like, dang, this does something.
And I know this is a format that people, speaking of formats, this is a format people are excited for, but draft.
Yes, limited in any way.
This being an uncommon, you're going to see this, you know? So draft or some sort of sealed, it's super cool.
Yeah. As far as its usability and what we know it to be the constructed format, I'm not sold on Simba. I think Steel just has it's 5 cost. Like, why do they have to make it 5?
It needed to be inkable.
He can.
It just needed to be inkable.
He can sing "Grab Your Sword," which is an interesting thing. He can sing "A Whole New World."
That's what I'm saying. Make him inkable because those cards aren't inkable.
Yeah.
If he was just inkable, I'd take it. I'd take it all day.
Yeah, it's tough, but I don't think he's bad.
No,
I'll just say it's
good.
a respectable card.
What's our next one?
Simba already has good cards too, so we'll move on.
Yeah.
The next one we have is, to me, one of the funniest arts in all of Lorcana. It really capitalizes on what that Floodborn identity is all about. It is Captain Hook thinking a happy thought. For 5 ink, but he's uninkable, you get a 2 strength, 5 willpower body with 1 lore. But the good news is you can shift him for 3.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He has the Challenger 3 ability, or Challenger +3. So when he challenges, he gets +3 strength, making him a 5/5. And he also has what I believe is just a stapled on bonus. Characters with cost 3 or less can't challenge this character. So you get a scenario, from my interpretation of this card, you get a scenario where like you have to shift this guy onto a Forceful Duelist.
For sure.
You have to. And when you shift him, he can immediately challenge. So he's immediately going to hit for 5. That's going to kill anything. That banishes anything on turn 3 that we know thus far. That's nice. I think the reason the second ability or the last ability was stuck onto him to prevent the 3 costs or lower, if you have any other ideas, let me know. I think it was to say, like, yes, he's weak, but your weak character that's left over can't crack back at him.
Yeah, for sure. Because
like
I see him a lot if you cracked into something, just getting cracked back and dying.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So that being
Like
on
Jafar.
there, yeah, exactly like Jafar.
Yeah.
Jafar gets taken out. Like you take out something high priority and then something low priority takes you out normally.
Yeah.
So this having that means it could possibly take out 2 very important characters or stop them from requesting or using that character, which is really good. I mean, it can do 5 twice, you know, because they can't challenge. They cannot challenge you. So if they're 3 costs or less, and it's nice that they bumped it up to 3 instead of like 2.
Yeah.
2 would have been like a meh. 3 is like 3 is actually pretty decent. I actually really like this card.
I can totally see this not being 2 lore though. Like I was worried. I think they were worried with like making it 2 lore that it would create a scenario where it would just outrace like low cost decks where like they could not interact with it and it would be left alone permanently.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think this card is cool. It's a Floodborn villain pirate captain, has a lot of synergies, but it's not cool enough for me to warrant putting it in my deck just because it has the curse that the Simba we just discussed has. It's an uninkable 5 cost. And trust me, Steel, I think, I'm not sure if this is true, but it feels like Steel has the most uninkable cards.
Well, I can guarantee it's got the most uninkable 5 cost.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
So the next card we're going to talk about, and then we're going to have kind of the bulkier section of cards, the few cards that we'll go through really fast. And this one will be fast too, but it's Ransack. It's an action, 2 cost inkable. Draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards. This is kind of like a looting effect for Magic players. It is a looting effect, but I really like this card mainly because it's inkable. So in certain situations, it's just your ink for the turn. It's just your land for the turn. But in other situations, it's much better than that. I mean, you're getting to filter through cards. I mean, especially Steel. Steel's always looking for either the extra card draw with the A Whole New World, or it's looking for the board wipe with Grab Your Sword. So with all that as well, I just like that this card can dig, and I think that
it's respectable.
It being in Steel is good, but it being able to be the other part and support for card draw for other decks that don't have any.
Yeah.
I mean, it's card filtering in a sense, but I just really like that.
It's interesting to me to see, like, I would have never guessed that the direct damage ink would have also been the looting ink
Yeah.
of like card draw. But the thing is, technically, Whole New World's the reverse of this. Like, you discard first and then get a refresh, but that's double sided. So I can see it totally working. The thing is about Ransack, you and Tyler are way more of a fans when y'all have tested the looting effect in the game. I know that it's getting better and better because you're finding more targets you want to dig for. I just feel like in my testing, I know I have a lot of room to grow, but in my testing, when you were in top deck mode so frequently, the card felt useless.
Yeah.
Literally useless, because you're just like, I see him and then I discard him. Like, it does nothing. It's ink.
Yeah, that's like the worst case
But-
scenario. That's why I like that it's inkable.
Yeah. But in Steel, now you have like a whole new world.
Mhm.
You have something that literally always pluses you. So it's interesting to me to see like a new lens of all these effects, like Tinkerbell, which I was not high on, as y'all know.
Mhm.
I'm way more high on that card, not just because it shifts, but because you actually have more card draw present. The more card draw you get, the more I care about my filtering
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's pretty nice. I like the blend that Steel and Amethyst have together now, of like Amethyst helps you add cards and filter what you see. This helps you see more and discard. And I like this with Sapphire because you can recur those items
That's
you
what
might
I was
want to
going to say.
discard. Like,
Sapphire and then Amethyst with recursion.
It's-
Anything
yeah.
that has recursion, discard cannot be underestimated because those abilities. There's so many times where you're going to want to bend something just so you can get it back.
yeah, and now whenever you look in a Ransack and you draw a frying pan and
The healing thing, the
and
healing
the
item.
healing thing, yeah,
healing flower.
If you look at the magical
Discard those
golden
two.
flower, if you see one of those and a character, and you're playing this, or let's make it easy, you're playing Steel Sapphire.
Yeah.
You see a Simba and a frying pan. You think, I can recur items.
Yeah.
I'm keeping the Simba, and I'm going to discard the frying pan unless I need the frying pan right now. And you don't feel bad.
Exactly.
It's basically, I'm going to draw that card. You know?
You're drawing two and discarding two, so it's other cards in your hand.
Oh, true. Yeah, you can
So-
hold on to it. You can,
yeah.
if you have items in your hand, you can just put those away.
So it has that viability.
yeah.
What do we
So-
have next?
For the bulk section, I will say that all these cards we're about to talk about, they really aren't that bad.
No, they're all fine.
Lilo's probably the weakest one, so I'll go ahead and start with her. She's a 3-cost inkable, 4 strength, 2 willpower, 2 lore. Even though she is like weak in the willpower department, we've seen Cheshire Cat have a 2 lore at a 3-cost inkable spot and quest and be scary, because whatever attacks into him is usually going to die.
Yeah.
I think she's very much like Cheshire Cat in that she more than likely is going to banish whatever challenges her, but it just kind of sucks that like a Fire the Cannons can kill her, or like
Yeah.
We'll Grab the Swords can
Yeah.
incidentally
that
kill her.
That two willpower
That
is the
doesn't
problem.
feel that good. It's more likely than even Cheshire that a low cost trades with her, but you still can quest for 2,
Exactly.
which is
She's not bad.
respectable for 3 cost. So what's another one we got?
Another one that's kind of the same
Oh, it's
thing.
what she's holding.
Oh, I was going to something different, but
Oh.
we can go to that.
Yeah, let's go
We'll
to
go.
that.
We'll go to the Plasma Blaster. It's an item, 3-cost, uninkable, and it has Quick Shot as its ability for the item. Exert it and pay 2. Deal 1 damage to chosen character.
This is something that like the sad part is to me, to play this card effectively, you have to play a lot of it, because you want to be able to like burn something down repeatably, but it's still a lot of ink investment, and it probably means you're not doing much else. So in a ramp deck, I could see this being a filler spot. The problem is it's uninkable, and I have other ramp cards I would want to be uninkable playing instead.
Yeah.
It's a cool effect. It's really cool. I love the meme of like, anyways, I started blasting.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a fun card.
It makes damage numbers good, with that, you do grab your swords and then you do a little 1 extra. But
yeah.
for me, it's like for 5 costs to do that, and it's uninkable.
Yeah.
The 5 costs the first time, then the next time it's 7
Yeah,
for
you're
2
paying-
damage. It's like, I'd rather play the Hans and wait a turn.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it will have its home in those decks that want to ping things down, and it'll be a
Control.
it'll be a fun card.
Yeah.
That's what it will be. It'll be a fun card.
What's next?
Next, I'll let you. I'll take this one. So I'll let you
Yeah,
save your
yeah.
favorite character
It'll be the last
for
one.
last.
Yeah.
So, and he's the simplest. But we have Starkey, Hook's Henchman. He's a 5-cost inkable, 5 strength, 4 willpower, and he quests for 1 lore. His ability is I Captain. While you have a captain character in play, this character gets 1+ on its lore.
So he'll only ever be 2. He doesn't get 1 lore for every captain. He just gets 1 lore for any captain being present. At first, the first time I read this card, I read it as the busted one. I was like, holy cow.
Every captain?
I was like, man, Captain Synergy's nuts and uncommon. But yeah, it's just if you have a Hook, essentially, or if you have a Mickey Mouse Musketeer, a captain, he's gonna
if you want to build a pirate deck and have captains in it, you're gonna like this card.
Yeah,
in there. It's
he's a
thematic.
filler card. He's a filler card.
Thematic. He's not bad. I mean, stats alone without the extra lore, he's whatever. With it, it's a little bit better.
Yeah. We've heard Ryan Miller, the co-designer and brand manager of Lorcana, that his favorite deck is pirates. Like, he beats people up with a pirate deck in the office. But given that we've seen like no obvious pirate synergy, I'm thinking he's playing with set 2 and 3 cards. But we did save the best character in all of Disney for last, and that is Aladdin, Cornered Swordsman. He is 2-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 1 willpower, and 2 lore. And I'll say this. If you're going to have a 2-cost inkable vanilla, I would love for him to have 2 lore, because that's the stat that matters. So the fact that, he will usually crack back and remove any 1 cost that dares challenge into him, that's not ideal. He can remove a lot of 2 costs that challenge into him. But his biggest threat is a snowman called Olaf, which is a little bit ironic. So, yeah, I love Aladdin.
Olaf's got him in the corner. I mean, it's nice that he's inkable. And, of course, the other plus side is now you have another deck that the Heroic Outlaw Ruby can be played in and have.
Excellent.
Now he has 4 copies of this and then 4 copies of the Street Rat. So there's 8 copies that Heroic can shift onto. So that's a big plus. So it doesn't always have to be Emerald if you want a lot of copies to shift onto. So that's a big one.
I will add too, the other thing too is when I've tested Emerald and Ruby together, and I've tried playing like 3 Prince Ali in Emerald and 3 Street Rat and 4 Heroic Outlaw because I want to make sure I have it.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things I noticed is you don't always want to telegraph a Heroic Outlaw. So sometimes, even though it is really nice to be able to set a Prince Ali down at 2 and let him sit there and they literally can't do anything except AoE to remove it before you shift.
Yeah.
That's the one downside of the Ruby. I've always liked the Ruby more because it had something that it could do and be active and like at least mess up their lore math. Well, the problem was with the 3 cost, it's harder because sometimes like if you don't want to telegraph it, you want to wait till like turn 4. Like set an Aladdin on turn 4, do anything else, and then on turn 5, have your Heroic Outlaw out there. Well, with 3 ink on turn 4, there's not much extra you're doing. So with a 2 cost Aladdin and Steel, at least it allows you to have a little more leeway. If you do want to wait for the surprise, it allows you to play like an Aladdin and a 2 cost on turn 4 to maximize your ink, and then turn 5 Heroic Outlaw. So it's pretty sweet. But that wraps up our Steel Ink discussion and our full Chapter 1 reveal discussion. Guys, we really appreciate you sticking around this long in the podcast. We know that not every person who listens gets this far. And so we just want to give a special shout out to everybody that's listened to, especially all of part 1. And if you're this far in part 2, probably all of part 2 as well. Or sorry, reverse that. If you listen to part 1, you're probably here too, like all the way. We appreciate you though. I appreciate you. I know Alex appreciates you. Even Anthony and Tyler who aren't here, I know they appreciate you. So would you do us a favor? Hit the like button, share the content, subscribe to the channel because you know we have more Lorcana content coming. And take this moment to go down to the comment section. Let us know your favorite card of the first chapter or a card you're most excited to build a deck around. What ink has surprised you the most? What do you love? Just go down to the comment section and just go wild. We will be responding. We'll be talking to you and really love the conversation. So, Alex, do you have any last words before we go?
No, I think we're ready for Digital Tyler to send us out.
All right. Digital Tyler, do your thing.
Thanks again, guys, for listening to Ready Set Live. If you could, like and share the content and subscribe to the channel, as well as hitting that notification bell for updates on when we post new content. Don't forget to leave a comment as we check for any questions that you guys might have, as well as things to add to our mailbag portion of the podcast. And who knows, maybe your question will be answered in the next episode. And thanks again to Texarkana Podcast Studio for their contribution in making this episode possible. As always, this is the crew from Ready, Set, Draw, ending our turn.